All right, so what do we think about the tech talk last night? I thought it went pretty well. She was pretty engaging. Any comments about that? I'll take that as it was amazing and we're speechless. I did put up the link to the video and her slides if you're interested in looking at the other TED Talk that she had on there. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good talk, and I was actually interested that she really embraced the whole talking to her 20-year-old self aspect of it, because I don't feel like she spent that much time really talking about what she does, um, which it's actually quite impressive. She is the center. She effectively manages software engineering teams that are all over the world that work on different aspects of their business. So she's this glue in the middle that works with a whole bunch of geeks that are writing code all day long, located in all sorts of different time zones and things like that. So she's been forced to kind of learn the computer science side of things, but also talk business. So she's a pretty impressive lady. And I thought that she really talked to really what she talked about yesterday would have applied to really anybody, not just technology students. So I'm going to try to distribute that through the business school and things like that as well. Okay, so let's look at our homework here. Oh, and again, I mentioned this on Slack yesterday, and I know everybody's checking Slack 10 times a day, but check it 20 times a day. But I think last class I had mentioned that any of your classes after 4 p.m. today are canceled. Oh, not canceled, but won't meet because of Easter break. It's actually 4 p.m. tomorrow on Thursday. So all your classes today meet, and all your during the day classes tomorrow meet. And then you have the rest of the day Thursday, all day Friday, the weekend, and then also Monday until 4 p.m. Off for Easter break. So sorry about that if anybody changed plans due to my bad information, but that's the scoop. That's what the normal academic calendar says. I just misrepresented it. Okay, so homework for today was the player can attack a monster in the room. So right now we have these two things that are separate in our room, and we want to have this fight to the death. So we have a fight to the death then breaks out if a player chooses to attack a monster. Maybe we have a command called kill and then the name of the monster that we want to attack. So a fight to the death then breaks out where the player attacks first. So the player always gets to take the first swing in our little model right now. And then the fight goes back and forth until someone dies. So for right now, let's just say there's always a 50% chance that we hit and miss or hit and hit, or swing and miss or swing and hit. And if you hit, we always do 1 damage. So right now we're just kind of hitting with our fists and things like that. So after each attempted swing, display some info about whether there was a hit or not and what the current status of both combatants is. All right, so as an example, we type in kill rat. It says whether or not we hit, and then it updates the rat's current situation. You could even show both you. Oh, actually, we are showing both us and the rat here. And whether you show it all on 1 line or across 2 lines doesn't really matter. Just give some sort of output where you say the name of them and then how much life they have left. You could even do this out of the total number of hit points and even a percentage if you wanted to show a percentage of life left. We can mess around with that. And it goes back and forth until one of the 2 combatants kicks the bucket. All right, so let's go over here. And right now, what does our guy do? We can just move around, right? And I think we can also type quit. Okay, so those are, we also have a look. All right, so these are our commands that we currently have. So now we want to have the ability to kill. So we have command is quit, command is look, but now we want to be able to deal with the command for kill. But now if you look back at our example here, it's not just kill, it's kill on a particular thing. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, here, let me just put, I'll take the kill off for right now. And then what is it? It's command, well, we'll do underscore. List is equal to, is it split command like that? What is our code to split up a string into a list? Do we have that yet? Can we talk about that? Let's see if we talked about that. Otherwise, we'll talk about it. Or we'll just write it, actually. Python split string. Oh, it's dot split. We've talked about split, haven't we? Okay, I have not talked about split. We talked about anything for splitting up a string? Okay. Yeah, then we got to write it ourselves because this wouldn't have been available to us. But here, I'll just talk about it real quick here. Since this particular command has multiple components, command.split, if I do kill rat, notice it gives me a list with kill and rat in it, so it splits it on spaces. All right, so that allows you to split up a split up something. You can also give split a parameter for what you want to split it on. So instead of the default spaces, it'll split it on, you know, question marks or something like that. But we don't have that ability right now, so we need to write our own version of that because we want to be able to type in something like kill rat. Now, right now, the only thing in this room is the rat. So actually, we would say kill space the rat, which actually becomes kind of a problem in and of itself, in that our rats have might have spaces in their name. So for right now, we're just going to rename our rat to be rat. And if for your homework you just implemented kill to kill whatever thing was in the room, that's okay. The main logic here was to kill the thing that was in the room. So if you didn't do this splitting up thing, that's all right. But we're going to go ahead and do it now for exercise. Okay, so now if I run this, we see there's something in the room called rat. All right, so we need to write our own function on. This is going to be a function that's not owned by monster. It's not owned by player. It's not owned by exit. It's not owned by room. It's just a plain Jane function, just like we had prior to dealing with object-oriented stuff. So we just need a nice little helper function here. So we'll call these helper functions. Put a little comment there. Actually, what is it in Python? Is it semicolon? No, it's pound, isn't it? That's a comment in there. Yeah. Okay. So we'll have some helper functions here. So we're going to define a function maybe called split string. And this will take a string as a parameter. And the, well, we spell it out here, split string into list. It'll take a string as a parameter, and we're going to go through every element in that string, searching. So if we show ourselves an example here, so split string into list, might take a string in the format of kill rat, like that. And what we want to do is we want to ultimately get that out of that guy. So that means we need to start walking. We're going to walk through every single character of the string. And as soon as we hit a space, we're going to add the string we've been building up into our list, empty out that string, and then burn through spaces. Right now, we can just make the assumption there's only a single space, but technically there could be a whole bunch of spaces in here, and we only want to get the kill and the rat. So we'll go ahead and write it to deal with all sorts of different numbers of spaces. So we'll just look at what that looks like. But we're going to have a loop that's going to go through every single character in this string and divide them up into a list. So first, let's write our loop that's going to go through every character in our string. Okay, so we'll say for C in, well, here, let's call it HR in a string. All right, now we're going to be building up a string. So we're going to need a maybe called temp string. We'll start off as the empty string. So we'll say if HR is equal to a space. Okay, so if we ran into a space, then what do we want to do? We want to go ahead and take whatever we've built up in temp string and add it to our answer list. So why don't we call this list of tokens? We'll start off as the empty list. And if we're currently looking at a space, we'll say list of tokens dot append temp string. Then we will empty temp string, ready for the next one. Else, if I'm not looking at a space, I must be in the process of building up a string. So I'll say temp string is equal to temp string concatenated with HR. So we'll just start building up our temp string. So as we're going through this, is that a space? No. So we'll capture the K. Is that a space? No. We'll capture the I. Is that a space? No. The L. Is that a space? No. The L. Is that a space? Yes. So what will we do? We'll add the string we've been building up, in this case kill, we'll append it to our list. Then we empty that guy out. We get past the space. Is that a space? No. Is that a space? No. Is that a space? No. Then once we get to the end of our string, we know we have one final thing left inside of our temp string. So after this for loop is done, we had one final thing that was left in there. We are assuming that we're always getting a command, so we're not doing a lot of error check. We're not doing any error checking in here, really. But you know, this is a reasonable little logic puzzle. So we know that temp string has one final token in it that hasn't been added. So we'll go ahead and add that last guy to our list. Notice that's outside of our for loop. So this guy will just take the final version of temp string, the last token that we built up, and add it to our list. And then we'll go ahead and return list of tokens, like this. All right, and this guy is called split string into list. So if I come down here, instead of it being command.split, we're going to have split string into list, and we'll pass it our string command. And if I say kill rat, notice we now have our kill and rat. So it built up our list there. Okay. So let me scroll back up to that real quick. Oh, I'm way past it. Now, actually, just to show you, let me just run it one more time. I'm still running it. So I'm going to type something again. I'm going to say kill, then a bunch of spaces, rat. And notice what I get from my list. I get all those individual spaces as tokens. So a couple things I can do here. I can go through and remove all the spaces from that. Let's see, I think the remove command. I hate this scroll thing. Didn't somebody have the job last time to remind me to update my mouse? So we'll go ahead and say list of tokens dot remove, and we'll remove spaces from this guy. And let's see what we get there. Kill, bunch of spaces, rat. X is not in list, so that space is not in there, but this guy is going to be in there. It is not. That's okay. So let's just go through. I wonder why that's not.
Would you just remove an empty string?
Oh, that's what I, oh, well, I'm picking up a space is what I'm actually reading, but I'm never actually concatenating that on there. Oh, it would be an empty string because that's what I started off my, this guy as. So those aren't spaces that are in there. You're right, those are empty strings. So my real question here was whether or not remove removes them all or just removes the first one. So list of tokens dot remove empty string, kill, bunch of spaces, rat. Yeah, it only removes the first one. There's probably a remove all as well, but just to shorten this up real quick, we'll go ahead and say for a token in list of tokens, we'll say if this will break it actually. You know what? We're going to write the better logic. I can go through and remove them after the fact if I want to. I would have to build up all the indexes that I want to remove. But why don't we go ahead and just not add empty strings. So if I hit a space here, I'm only going to append. So if I'm looking at a space and temp string is not equal to the empty string. If those two things are true, then we'll go ahead and append it. Otherwise, we'll just skip this. So that means I've hit multiple spaces. So kill rat. Do I have my? HR is equal to a space and temp string is not equal to the empty string. Then we'll append it. So if we have multiple spaces or multiple spaces in a row, we'll detect the next space, but temp string is equal to the empty string. So only if it's greater than 0. If it's equal to the empty, if it's equal to a space and the length of temp string is greater than 0, we'll concatenate it. So I'm looking at a space, I'll get my string, and then I'm zeroing out temp string. Next time through, I get my next char, which might be a space. In our case, it would be a space. We just dealt with that one. Now we're dealing with this next space. And I'm saying, if this is true and this is true, the length of this guy is greater than 0. The length of that guy will not be greater than 0. He was the empty string from the previous time through. What is my mouth?
Is it something with your else statement?
Well, it shouldn't be. I mean, this is tacking that on, but I should be getting into this statement here. If I should be able to say temp string, unless I misspelled it, not equal to the empty string. So this says, as I'm going through here, I'm looking at chars. So, you know, I hit this first space right there. And that first space is going to say, am I looking at a space? I am. And is temp string something other than the empty string? If both of those things are true, then I'll append temp string to my list of tokens, and then I'll set temp string equal to the empty string. And I won't hit this else because you only hit this one or this one. So we'll spin back up. We'll get our next HR, which is going to be this guy right here. Come through. Is that guy a space? It is. And is temp string not equal to the empty string? It is equal to the empty string because the previous time through, I set it equal to the empty string. So this is false and this is true. So what will I do here? Oh, it is with my else. You're right. I am tacking on that space onto my temp string. So else if HR is not equal to a space. If it's a space, we'll just skip it. HR not equal to.
So you have to type elif, not else.
Yeah. Man, I'm batting 1,000 today, aren't I? I was doing a bunch of C++ earlier, so I'm not in Python mode, apparently. All right, so there's our kill rat. We'll leave well enough alone with that guy. All right, but for future reference, now we have a function. I'll go ahead and add it to our notes here. Strings have a split function that you can say for any string, like if I have a string kill rat dot split, this guy will get you a list containing kill and rat as 2 separate elements. Let's test it real quick because I think the default is, split on something called white space, not just spaces, but white space. And let me prove that to you before I set that in stone. Just for a moment here. Let's call our command dot split. And now when I run this, I'll say kill, I'll put a bunch of spaces in here, rat. Yep. So I get, although it is, no, it's right. So notice here that even though I had a bunch of spaces in there, it only picked up kill and rat. So it did not split this guy on a space, it split this guy on white space. So white space is things like spaces, carriage returns, you know, but not just a space, potentially a collection of spaces. Things we don't see would be white space. All right, so that's a handy tool for us to have. And the reason I'm doing it this way is now any command we type in, I mean, if I just type in look, for instance, I'll get my list that has look in it. So I know that the actual command I'm issuing is always at bucket 0 of my list. All right, So now that I have my list, what I can actually do, so I don't need this variable anymore from my input. I already have my input. I processed it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reuse that function to be command list at bucket 0. That's my actual command. That makes sense? But so if you see here, I'll just print out command. So if I type in kill rat, that's my command, is kill. If I type in look, there's my command, look. So my command is always going to be the first element in my command list. So I went ahead and I reused my command variable that was used up here to hold the actual command, because I had already processed the thing that was typed in by the user and stored all the portions of my command inside a command list. All right, that makes some sense? So now my commands are stored in a variable called command, but it's actually the first element of that list. So I can still ask all these questions here, but now when I go to this, my next else if, I would say command, if that is equal to kill. Now, if I'm in here, I know that I'm going to have a second element in my list. Now, if I wanted to support things with more than I guess I could support like a rat by just combining all the rest of the stuff in my list, but then I wouldn't know how many spaces it necessarily had in it. So for right now, let's just assume that all our monsters have a single name, but they don't have spaces in it. We'll just say that's a rule in our game to not complicate things right now. All right, so if I'm killing something, I'm going to kill something else that's in this room, and that thing is going to be, so let's see, who am I killing is going to be command list at bucket 1. That's who I'm killing. All right, so what we need to do is we need to create a, well, we could do a couple different things. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an object for a fight. We're going to, so when a fight breaks out, we're going to have an instance of a fight. All right, and a fight is between, for right now, it's going to be between a single player and a single monster. Those are the two people that are fighting. All right, so we're going to use objects here to pull this off. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to create a class called a fight. And a fight is going to be made up of, for us right now, it's always going to be a player and a monster. So a player and a monster. Those are the two things that can fight each other. And we'll go ahead and say self dot a player is equal to a player. Self dot a monster is equal to a monster. All right, so that's going to be it for the constructor right now, because this is just a simple fight. And then we're going to have a function here called start fight. It's not going to need any parameters for right now, because starting a fight just tells our player and our monster to start attacking each other. So now we go and we play by the rules that we wrote here in our homework assignment. This guy. All right, so the player always attacks first, and they have a 50% chance of hitting. So in order to give ourselves the 50% chance, we're going to need to make sure we have random, and I think it's called what, rand int. All right, so start fight. We're going to have the player attack first, then have the rat attack. So let's just have a single punch thrown by each of them first. and then we'll suck it into a loop that keeps going until they all die. So we'll let each of them throw a warning shot initially and see how this works. All right, so we're gonna say hit chance is equal to random.randint, and we'll say 0 to 50. Actually, why don't we say this? We'll say 0 to 100, like that. So we'll get some number between, actually, let's do 1 and 100. Some number between 1 and 100. That'll give us 100 values. Then we'll ask the question, if hit chance is greater than 50. Okay, so if we are on the far side of 50, that means we hit. So if we hit, what are we going to do? We need player 1 to deal damage, and we need a player to deal damage, and we need a monster to take damage. So we're going to teach our player how to deal damage. And right now, deal damage means we return a 1, because we always do 1 damage when we deal damage. All right, so not all that interesting. As you might imagine, later on, we're going to get into a situation where we might deal more or less damage depending on the kind of weapon we might be holding or something like that. All right, but right now we're fighting with fists, so damage is, if we hit, it's always 1 damage every single time. So when a player deals damage, it's 1. And when a monster, where's my monsters? This guy now knows how to take damage. And when he takes damage, what he's going to do is he's going to reduce his hit points by an amount of damage that he's taking. So we'll say self dot hit points minus equals amount of damage. So we'll reduce our hit points by that amount of damage. All right.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For the random, for like getting the random integer, is there a reason you do 1 to 100 instead of just doing like either picking 0 or 1?
Not necessarily. I guess I would say, in my mind at least, you're probably going to get pseudo random numbers is a whole area of computer science. Like, how do you get true randomness? So I think the bigger range you work with, the more randomness you're likely to get. That may or may not be true with Python's random number generator. So getting a number between 0 and 1 or 1 and 2 might be every bit as random. So I guess the short answer to your question is no, there's not a great reason other than I said 50%. So anything greater than 50 means you hit. Anything less than or equal to 50 means you missed. Something like that. That kind of sounds like a 50%-y thing, but so 0 or 1 or 1 or 2. So that's perfectly reasonable. Make sense? All right, so a monster knows how to take damage where an amount of damage is passed in, and he reduces his hit points by that. Now you might imagine after the damage is taken, well, let's just have the player give a cheap shot first. It's always fun. So here's my start fight. So if the player is able to hit the monster, then what is he going to do? Well, we're going to have amount of damage equal to a player dot get, what do I call it? Get damage, deal damage, deal damage. So we'll ask the player to deal some damage, and we store that result inside of amount of damage. And then we're going to ask a monster to take some damage and we'll pass it that amount of damage. All right. Now we can add a little commentary into this. So we can say, you know, a monster, you know, he has a name. So maybe we do something like print. We'll do this as an F string. So we'll have his name takes so this will be self.name, and the amount of damage he took was called amount of damage. So we'll just add a little commentary to our take damage where it says, you know, rat takes 1 damage. Something like that. You know, once we have this thing a little bit more advanced, where somebody might be wielding like a flaming sword or something like that, and he gets really cracked, maybe we have some different commentary for the exactly the amount of carnage that occurred in this particular swing. That's always what made those games fun years ago. Is, you know, you would have stuff like, you know, your blow grazes the so and so, or bruises him, or mauls him, or liquefies him. You might imagine that would be a pretty hefty blow. But when you didn't have graphics to back it up, that's how you got your entertainment. But for right now, we're just doing 1 damage all the time, so we'll just mention that we got hit. That's what happens when we take some damage. So start fight figures out how much damage, or well, figures out whether or not we're going to hit. Then as long as we do hit, we will calculate the amount of damage a player is going to hit, and then we'll have the monster take that damage. All right, so we'll go down to our kill command. So we have who am I killing? And we need to create a fight. So we'll say a fight is equal to a fight, and the fight constructor requires 2 parameters. I need to give it a player, and I need to give it a monster. Well, I already have access to the player down here. The player down here is called the player. So I can pass this guy the player as my player. But now I need to go ahead and get the monster that's in the room. So I've typed in, so my command list at bucket 1 is a string that is, in this case, rat. So I need to ask the current room I'm in to provide me the rat object, the monster object that is the rat from the room. So we'll go ahead and teach a room how to provide us some information. So we'll say def get inhabitant. And this guy will take a name in as a parameter. And we want to go through and get our entire list of, we want to go through our list of inhabitants here, looking for an inhabitant whose name is equal to what was passed in. So we'll say for an inhabitant in self.list of inhabitants, if an inhabitant dot name is equal to the name of the inhabitant we're looking for, because our inhabitants are made up of players and monsters. Notice here that a player has a name and a monster also has a name. So whether I just pulled, so whether an inhabitant is a player or an inhabitant is a monster, they will both have a name. So this is a legal question for me to ask. If this inhabitant's name is equal to the name I'm looking for, then I want to go ahead and return the inhabitant I'm looking at. If I get through my entire list and I didn't find the inhabitant, like I said, killed turtle, and there's no turtle in the room, I'm going to go ahead and return none. I did not find the guy you asked me to find, so I'm going to give you nothing so that you can respond accordingly to that. So down here in our kill command, here's the who am I killing. So if who am I killing is equal to none, which means I typed in a name of something that doesn't exist, then I'll say I don't see anything to attack. Something like that. And then I'll tell my loop to continue. I'll just spin up to the next time through where I display the room, ask them what do they want to do. This was a dud. I said I'm going to attack the turtle, and there was no turtle, so I just hit continue. Otherwise, and I can put this in an else if that makes you feel better. Otherwise, I'm actually going to fight. And who's going to fight? The player is fighting against who am I killing. That's who's fighting. Then we'll say a fight dot start fight. So we'll tell that fight to break out. And what does start fight do? Start fight figures out whether there's going to be a hit. Well, rolls a number between 1 and 100. As long as it's greater than 50, we'll ask the player to do some damage, and then we'll have the monster take some damage. So we'll say kill dog. The player's not defined. Give me a moment. Oh, it's called the player. Sorry. The name of my variable is called the player. Yeah, here it is right there. So it's in the kill. I misspell it. A player comes in. It's called a player. Oh, it's self.a player. This is the player associated with this instance of the fight object, as well as self.a monster, the monster that's associated with this particular fight object. So kill dog. Did not get my, I think it just looped back through. Kill rat. Let's follow my logic here. So who am I killing? Oh, killing me here. I'm really out of it today. So this is the name of the guy I'm killing. So now I need to actually get the object that I am killing is equal to, I need to ask the room that I'm currently standing in, and that will be the room that the player is currently in. So my player knows how to get his current room. So the player will ask himself his current room and then search for the monster with that name. So the player dot current room, and then the function I wrote in room was called get inhabitant, this guy right here. And the inhabitant I'm looking for is the who am I killing? So now if I say kill dog, string object, oh, I'm still passing it, not the object, hold on. Oh, yeah. So this is the guy I'm actually attacking. This is the guy I'm asking is if he's equal to none. If he's not, then he's the one who's going to be fighting, not the string. So now kill dog, it says, I don't see anything to attack. Otherwise, if I say kill rat, there is a rat in there. So now let's see, I missed him. So I'll try killing rat again. There we go. The rat takes 1 damage. Okay. So finally, I'm going to go ahead and take out my thing where I'm printing my command out, proving this. So now in my fight, I want to do this over and over and over again, flip-flopping who I'm going to be, who's attacking who. Okay, so we're basically out of time, so I'll explain it out loud. I'll finish writing it, so I'll put it up, so you'll have the kind of the finished code for this. If you want to hang out and watch me finish writing it, you can. But in any case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle between the player and the monster by putting them into a list and then changing up who's the one who's attacking. So I'm going to toggle back and forth between 0 and 1 by using mod. And that's going to switch up who's attacking who. So instead of saying self.aPlayer doing damage, I'm going to say the attacker dot deal damage, and then the defender dot take damage. And then the next time through the loop, the attacker and the defender will switch places. And we'll just do that until whoever the defender is dies. That would be the killing blow. All right. So no homework for over Easter break. So the next time I will see you is on Wednesday at 10 a.m. And we're going to start talking about inheritance. So one thing I wanted you to get out of today, even though I was out of it, apparently, maybe I need the break too, is this idea that our player and our monster have a lot in common with each other right now. So what we're going to end up doing is moving a lot of that commonality into a central object, maybe called an inhabitant, and then have players and monsters each represent differences from inhabitant. So I think that will let us introduce inheritance next class. All right, have a safe Easter. I'm assuming most of you are probably not traveling, but hopefully you can decompress, because I'm guessing the last couple of weeks have been a little bit wonky. And I will see everybody a week from today. But like I said, I'm going to stay on here for another probably 5 minutes or something like that, talking to myself. So if you want to hang out and see that, that's great. Otherwise, I'll keep the recording going and get the final version of this code posted that swaps back and forth until somebody dies. Not going to take very long.
Thank you. Have a good Easter.
Yep, you take care. So we're going to say the combatants is equal to self dot a player and self dot a monster. So we're going to put those guys in a list. And then we're going to have a variable maybe called cur defender is equal to 0. So the first time, actually we'll say cur attacker. Well, cur defender will be 1. Cur attacker will be 0. All right, so this is the pause for those guys. So maybe cur attacker pause, cur defender pause. So then inside, then we'll go ahead and we'll set up our initial cur attacker is equal to the combatants at bucket cur attacker pause. Cur defender is equal to the combatants at bucket cur defender pause. And then when we fight, we're going to have the cur attacker deal some damage. And we'll have the cur defender take some damage. So the first time through, that will be the player and the monsters. The exact same thing that was just happening will happen. All right. So then we're going to ask the question, if cur defender, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little function to my defenders and my players, my monsters and my players. So we're going to have something called isDead. And this is going to return whether self.hitpoints is less than or equal to 0. So it'll return true if his hit points is less than or equal to 0. That's what isDead will be for a monster. And it'll be the exact same thing for a player, similar to what I mentioned a few minutes ago, where both players and monsters have a lot in common right now. So we're going to be pulling those things into a centralized inhabitant class. And we'll draw pictures for that next class. All right. So we could ask a player or a monster whether they're dead. So now we'll go down here. And we'll say if cur defender is dead. So if that guy died, then we'll print out print cur defender dot name. Actually, let's do it in a formatted string. Has died, something like that. And this is going to be cur defender dot name. That's the guy who just died, whoever was currently defending, because he must have just got hit and now he's kicked the bucket. So whoever that was has died. And then we'll go ahead and break out of the loop that we haven't written yet. All right, so we're going to say while true here. And then all this stuff will be indented. If I didn't break out in my else, I'm going to switch cur attacker and cur defender pause. So I'll say temp is equal to cur defender pause. Then I'll say cur defender pause is equal to cur attacker pause. And then cur attacker pause is equal to temp. So I just switched those two numbers. So now the guys, the who's bucket 0 and who's bucket 1 has changed. So the next time through our loop, who's the attacker and who's the defender will be the opposite guy. So now we'll go ahead and run this. We'll say kill rat. Oh, I need to take in self for is dead. No attribute called deal damage. Oh, we didn't teach. We taught players earlier how to deal damage. We didn't teach monsters how to deal damage. Similarly, we need players to learn how to take damage. Again, these guys look a lot like monsters. So they're gonna, this is all gonna go into inhabitants next time. So now players and monsters both know how to deal and take some damage. All right, so the rat has died. And chances are we can fight him a bunch of times and the rat will always die. Rat has died again. Now, if I go and kill this, so if I look, this rat is still here, but he's actually a dead rat. So if I try to kill him again, nothing happens because I never even started the fight. He was actually dead. All right, so we'll leave it at that for now. I'll post this code and I will see everybody on Wednesday.